Welcome back on board the Starship. I'm talking with Tony Farrell, who is an ex-principal intelligence analyst for South Yorkshire Police, and he's been talking about a terror threat assessment that you had been assigned to author or prepare. Now, you went home on the evening of the 7th of July. That's and right. you thought, no, I'm not going to do the report in the way that they want me to. I'm going to say it how I believe it is.
That's right.
So what happened when you went on the 8th to deliver your report to the police?
Well, having sweated all that evening on the 7th of 7th, I got up extra early and went into work really early and resolved in my own mind to make my stance. Mm-hmm. I knew full well that they wouldn't accept a strategic threat assessment that had narrative in that was incriminated internally in any sense, shape or form. Mm-hmm. So I felt this is an absurd situation. So what I did was alert management to my stance in such a way that would shock them. Mm-hmm. I produced a front sheet of a strategic threat assessment matrix model, a simplified model of the strategic threat, mm-hmm. that was absurd looking, that right. really zoomed in mm-hmm. on two things and two things alone. Mm-hmm. And that was the threat from terrorism mm-hmm. and the truth behind 9/11 and the truth behind 7/7, mm-hmm. with all other domains of criminality relegated to no importance whatsoever. Right. Because I thought this was the single most important issue to deal with when we're talking in terms of a strategic threat, which this was what it was. So
the way that the information is presented is as a matrix. So there's the different types of threat and what is likely to happen, yeah. or the outcomes of those threats, and you've just basically filled it in. I mean, I've got them here saying 100%, 100%, 100% is the threat of internal terrorism or internal tyranny. So you present this and what happened then?
Well, it shocked. It had the effect. My manager clearly looked disconcerted and, pleaded with me, Tony, we can't do business like this. Mm-hmm. Which I could understand. We couldn't do business like this, but neither could I be mm-hmm. doing business which would render me complicit in a lie.
I mean, so you would have been happy if it allowed you to put it in, along with perhaps other threats in there as well, but you just wanted that stated as a threat.
I would have been happy if management would have actually shown some understanding on this issue in terms of, I wanted some, I wasn't naive enough that this could go out in a form that said the threat was from internal tyranny. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to alert management mm-hmm. to that very fact, mm-hmm. and I offered to provide them with a full report that would justify why I was of the opinion that the threat was internally. Now,
I mean, I guess they could have compromised, I suppose. They could have said, okay, we'll let you put it in as long as you say that these people are deluded, that they're a threat. It's a threat that these people think there was false flag, but...
Well, I didn't... No, I'd weighed up which story I believed, yeah. And on balance, I was totally persuaded, yeah. as far as, almost as near certain as you can be, mm-hmm. that the government versions of both 9/11, the respective government versions of 9/11 and 7/7 were becoming so ridiculous, yeah. Surrendered and totally unreliable, and that I don't know exactly how everything happened. There were far more plausible hypotheses out there that explained the situation and completely debunked the mm-hmm. government stories. Yes. And that was being covered up mm-hmm. now, and I couldn't, in my conscience, I couldn't do anything that would countenance the perpetuation of that lie.
Mm-hmm. So then, on the 8th, you're there, you've presented these two matrices to this officer, and you thought you were then going to go and present this to the board?
No, definitely not. I knew that the information I presented to them would have no utility mm-hmm. in a formal looking strategic threat assessment. So right. basically, the plan to get to the board meeting that afternoon was now derailed. I knew that, right. And I wasn't going to hand over the other work I'd done, because it would be totally misleading
Right.
of me to have done so. It would mislead on the threat, and I was not prepared to bear false witness. And that is simply in accordance with their own professional standards for honesty and integrity.
Yes.
So, as well as my faith about not breaking a ninth commandment of thou shalt not bear false witness on somebody, and I would have had to have done that to complete it to their satisfaction, I was not prepared either to breach the very own professional standards about honesty and integrity.
So what happened then, Tony?
Well, clearly at that stage they were disappointed that they were going to miss a deadline for the board meeting. But I had already planned after this to take 3 weeks annual leave. That was scheduled in and planned. So they asked me to explain, would I go home and put together a report to explain my situation, to explain my stance, why I did what I did. And I had to turn that round within a few days. So. Obviously, in a state of mind whereby I'd now put my head above the parapet, I now had to explain myself. So I put together a report specifically for my Director of Intelligence, explaining why I felt compelled to make my stance in the way I did in terms of my role as a principal intelligence analyst, my role as a Christian, my role as just an ordinary citizen and an analyst. So from a number of perspectives, all this was giving me a problem. It was giving the organisation a problem and a dilemma. So I put my own self-assessment down for the purposes of management, for them to consider what they should do with this situation.
And this document that you drew up while you were off work, it's in tabular form, and it says viewpoint held by the principal analyst and the probability assessment. So you list various factors involved in 9/11 and 7/7, and you give out your probability of that being true.
That's right.
And these are all like 0.99, 0.95, 0.95, 0.90. Yeah.
This was my personal report. On my reasons for doing what I did, and I am using open source information to put a probability assessment on a hypothesis that have been correct.
Right.
So whilst I can't say that I was absolutely certain of these things happening the way I did, I made some strategic inferences as to what was going on, such as the New World Order with its satanic ideology, such as the false flag operations of 9/11 and 7/7, and the rationale and the reason behind those, which touched on the wars, the immoral wars that all countries were perpetrating in Afghanistan and Iraq under false colours.
Okay. Now this was submitted on the 12th of July, this report, is that right?
That's correct.
And then did you get any feedback from that?
The report wasn't read in front of me by my manager. I was asked really to go on annual leave and leave the office. Privileges were withdrawn at that stage, so that clearly at that stage management had concerns about what I was raising and about why I was raising these. Now, the only thing that happened before I went off, the Director of Intelligence did pop his head round the corner just with a thumbs up sign to say that he found the report acceptable for the purposes he needed that report for.
So he put his thumbs up to kind of say, yes, this is what we wanted. That seems a strange. Why do you think he put his thumbs up?
Well, he wanted, he clearly, the police understandably wanted to know exactly why I felt so compelled to make the stance I did. Because they had to explain away the fact that an important strategic board meeting
had been cancelled.
Had been not cancelled, but an important assignment had not been delivered.
Right.
Right. So I had to explain. I had some explaining to do,
Yeah.
and that was the report that did it. It was a report that held no punches. I told them as it was, warts and all, and that was the report that was the report that ultimately led to my dismissal. I then went on annual leave for 3 weeks with one-to-one contact from a detective chief inspector. Subsequently, that morphed into gardening leave, almost like suspension.
Gardening leave, that's a term where It's a bit
Well,
like being
it's
suspended.
close to being suspended.
Close to
I'm
being
not
suspended.
under any disciplinary action at this stage.
Right.
I'm simply, it's not in the organisation's best interest to have me at work while they're contemplating what they were going to do with me.
Yeah.
So it then occurs that there's a disciplinary hearing schedule for the 2nd of September in 2010.
Yeah.
So from the last time I have contact within the organisation itself is the 12th of July, and then I'm on leave for 3 weeks, then
Right.
gardening leave.
So, and then you were asked to go to this hearing.
Appeal. This disciplinary hearing.
Disciplinary hearing.
Yes, where I've already been notified that there's a potential that I could be dismissed.
Right, okay, so tell us what happened when you went to this disciplinary hearing.
Yes, I went alone. I didn't have any, I chose not to have any union representation. I wasn't in the union. I didn't need anybody with me. I presented my own defence, and the Director of Intelligence presented the management case. Now, and the Director of Finance, a member of Senior Command Team, decided that my beliefs were, made my position as Principal Intelligence Analyst untenable.
Right.
He did not say that my beliefs were incorrect. He said they could be true. He did not say that there was any allegation of any kind of misconduct whatsoever.
So you actually said they may be true?
Yeah.
Right.
It's not just said, it's written down in the transcripts that, you know, this was quite a solemn occasion in one sense. It was a bizarre in one sense,
right,
because they were sacking me.
But you felt
I'd not done anything wrong in a way.
Right. So
it's just an incompatible belief.
Is this the point where one of the officers said, Tony, we're never going to change them?
No, that wasn't.
That was in another.
At an earlier meeting with the Director of Intelligence, when I first broached the subject of the notion of 9/11, 7/7 being inside jobs, then there wasn't any. You know, from my Director of Intelligence, there certainly wasn't any attempt to rubbish my notion. On the contrary, it was almost like, Tony, what can we do about it? We're just the foot soldiers of the government.
Right. So we can take it from that then there's some sympathy within the force with certain people who don't dispute your viewpoint.
It's difficult to say. I'd be second guessing.
Right.
I think having alerted them to the evidence out there, they may well have been aware of it before. I just don't know. But I was satisfied in my own mind that I'd done my level best to alert them to a potential problem. Now, if they'd chosen to look into it, just where the leads I'd given them, then I believe that they're intelligent enough people to have formed an opinion that there's something in it. Okay,
so at that particular hearing, you were sacked then, at that point in September?
At the hearing on the 2nd of September, I was dismissed from service as a result of having of my position as Principal Intelligence Analyst being untenable because of my incompatible beliefs. And I was given 3 months pay in lieu of notice.
Right. But they didn't actually say that your beliefs were incorrect. They just said that they're incompatible with the force.
No.
With the police force. Okay.
Senior managers, the senior managers I've come into contact with, I've never said my beliefs are incorrect.
Now you mentioned a priest that you went to see.
A minister.
Sorry, minister. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Tony? Because you said that you would go and see this minister, which is part of the police, the church.
Sorry, don't want to talk cross purposes here. I have not, since the dismissal, have not been in contact with any employee of South Yorkshire Police. You know, in any kind of informal chat or anything like that, other than through the formal process of the hearing, with one exception, and that's the I have from time to time met up with the chaplain, the police headquarters chaplain, who has similar Christian beliefs to myself, who I knew before any of the issues arose that led to my dismissal. So I probably on a regular basis of about once a month, would meet at a local church in Sheffield, just to keep in contact with him and to pray over the situation. He was a bit of a link back to South Yorkshire Police, and we would undoubtedly discuss, what might be happening.
Right.
But it was all speculative because he wouldn't necessarily know an awful lot what was happening.
Right.
But I was actually relating back to him how I was feeling, obviously, in a position of being dismissed, and now, trying to, decide what to do in the future with having been dismissed from police service.
Does that take away any of your pension rights, the fact that you're dismissed in that way?
Yeah, there's been an actuary calculation, a preliminary one, based on how it will affect my pension at the age of 66. And the initial report that came out that was presented in front of the judge to consider was of the order of £140,000. That was on the assumption that I would be in paid employment by now.
But you've not lost any pension that's already been accrued?
No, in a way that's frozen.
That's frozen, right.
Yeah.
So you've lost potential pension earnings for the future.
That's right, yes.
Right,
yes.
Okay. So you decided to fight this decision then, Tony?
Yeah, I mean, I'd always, initially I didn't want to appeal, but it was bizarre really, because at the appeal hearing, I went to the police authority, and it was almost as if the dismissing officer, that would have been the Director of Finance, was encouraging me to appeal to the police authority. So they acknowledged that I'd more or less said, look, I will not appeal. If you feel there's need to sack me, so be it. I'm not. So initially I didn't want to appeal, but I was persuaded from a number of angles, but one, not least, from their own South Yorkshire Police manager, who were dismissing me, who said, I know you've said you won't appeal, but there is an appeal mechanism, and it's the police authority, which is a different animal, different body to the Chief Constable. So after being dismissed, I went to I sought legal advice for the first time.
Right.
And it was upon that advice that I made the decision to appeal and put the appeal into the South Yorkshire Police Authority Appeals Committee.
Okay then, Tony, well, we're going to go for another break now, and after the break we're going to continue with Tony's story as it unfolds, because it's at a fairly crucial stage. You're awaiting a tribunal at the moment, but we'll talk more after this.